Welcome to Operational Harmony, Balancing Business and Mental Well-Being, a podcast with honest discussions about professional life and mental well-being in a natural conversational way. Your host is Nikki, founder of Nikki's Office, where she supports entrepreneurs through operations, systems, and strategy. And now, let's hear from our guest.
Hi, my name is Lee Walker, and I'm happy to be here with Nikki today. I'm a small business consultant, and I focus on turning nickels into quarters for small businesses, especially in the people services industry, focusing largely on accountants, boutique hotels, and other consultants, but we'll work with other people that need some help as well. Thanks for having me on today, Nikki. Pleasure talking to you.
Let's start with your story, and then we'll build up into the leadership conversation.
Early in my childhood, I was a little bit depressed. I didn't know I had ADHD. And it really made me focus on understanding what I don't understand naturally. When I went to school, I studied psychology, went into IO psychology, which is business psychology, and then ended up in the consulting world. My first real job out of that was working at an accounting firm where I was about for 3.5 years, where I helped transform that business to really focus on having better efficiencies internally, better efficiencies on delivery, better value on delivery, creating some new services to offer, and then also building in the people processes. Now what I do is I help all kinds of other businesses do the same and really come from the foundation of how do you really make a business that's worth scaling, how do you scale it correctly, and how do you build the most foundational piece of that, which is the people. Nikki, you mentioned a few minutes ago, is really leading from vulnerability. Because if you aren't vulnerable with your team, how do you expect them to be vulnerable with you, expect them to be their best, and to help you get the best results? If you're not aligned with them and who they are as a person towards your ultimate objective in the business, it's going to be a lot harder to really see them as the value producers they are and continue that mindset that ultimately is harmful for everybody, that you only look at them as a resource rather than the biggest asset of your firm.
And so with the ADHD and the depression, like you obviously at 8 years old, when you have depression, you don't always recognize it as depression. So when did you figure out like when it started and how did you come back from it?
I don't think I realized that's what it was until maybe my teenage years. Now, I was clearly depressed at a young age, but I thought it was just anger. Based on what my parents had taught me and what I was raised with, depression wasn't as much of a thought or a conversation, but anger always was. So I actually went to therapy, I think at the age of 6 or 7, and just a few times, and it was more for anger issues, which carried through in other aspects. Now, as a full adult, I realized that I wasn't naturally angry, I was naturally depressed, and I was angry that I wasn't getting the support that I needed. And that's what got me the attention that I needed, whether positive or negative. I learned later in my life that I wasn't the only one depressed in my family, that was impactful from multiple generations and across my generation as well. And having that understanding has helped me to mitigate that and to focus on things that helped me from a physical, mental, social, and other aspects. When, as a teenager and childhood, I dove into video games as my escape from reality and to essentially foster those social needs that weren't being met by the people I considered friends or my family until I was in my middle teenage years. I was around 16 or 17 playing football, and at one day I just woke up and realized I'm just not happy, and I don't feel like, for me, video games are a good outlet. And I read a lot too, but mostly fiction. Like, they were escapes. They weren't facilitators. So with that, I decided to really focus on being more social, find ways to be more vulnerable with others. And it was hard. I didn't really know how to be vulnerable for a good portion of my life. I'm still working on it. I think it's not something that is easy, especially when you don't have that support. I grew up with a avoidant attachment style. Do you also have an attachment style like that?
Yeah, I have probably avoidant, but I don't know, my situation was weird. So I have a narcissistic mother. I avoided her to no end, but I also ended up with that. Now I have a avoidance of a lot of things because I don't want to end up in certain situations again. I have to be careful with myself and others because I will, at the stroke of a like one tiny thing off on a person, I'm just like, oh, that's a person that I don't want in my life. And I've learned, look, it took me a long time to learn the art of cutting people out because I always felt bad. It's my fault. I cut them out, so it's my fault they're gone. Why am I so upset about it? But then I had to learn that I was upset because I was mourning the person I thought they could have been or what I needed from them that I didn't get.
I feel that a lot.
Yeah. I had to cut them out. They were cut out for a reason, at least the big main people. But now I find, because now that I cut them out for a reason. Like, I didn't just decide one day that they were awful people. No, the people I cut out are awful people, or at least they acted awful towards me. And so that is not, like, everybody's always like, as soon as they hear somebody cut somebody out, they were trying their best. Okay, I saw them trying their best when they were treating a sibling or somebody else 100,000 times better than they were treating me. That was them trying their best. I personally know without a shred of doubt that they were not trying their best with me. So that's not going to fly with me. I don't have to feel guilty for cutting out somebody who absolutely was not trying their best or absolutely did not love me their way, which is another one that kind of pisses me off. But they loved you in their own way. You were special to them in their own way. No, just shut up. Stop saying that to people. So yes, I do avoid people. I do cut people out, and I have to be very careful because I have noticed that if somebody says or does something that is just absolutely out of my morals, guidelines, and all that kind of thing, I'm just like, oh, I don't like that person. I want nothing to do with that person. And so I have to watch myself because I will have no patience for that person anymore. Like, why are you talking to me? Go away.
Yeah, I think to what you're saying, there's definitely a lot, and I hesitate to say that people are terrible people. There are definitely terrible people out there. I think there's a lot where they struggle to be their best version, or maybe I don't bring out their best version of them. So sometimes people are like, oh, that person's so great and for such and such reason. And so what you're saying is they weren't around me. And there is a relationship aspect of that, is maybe there's just something about you that creates the worst person of them and vice versa. So sometimes they are just something about them that brings out the worst part of you, and then it's this negative feedback loop. And I think where you're getting caught up in that process of guilt is because you've seen how they are with other people. You're like, man, why couldn't I bring that out of them? And that describes my college relationship a lot. She was amazing with so many other people, but with me, it was always a lot of antagonism and a lot of fighting and a lot of negativity. And I think it took me a couple of years to really realize like what I was doing because I didn't have those skills, those relational skills. And I have in the past had really antagonistic relationships with my sister, and my mom just wasn't even taught a lot of those skills that were needed for me and my sister to have better relationships. And so it's a whole aspect of the whole dynamic. And so that was one of the things that caused me to study psychology, is why do other people have better interactions with just about everybody than I? And of course, over the years, I've gotten a little bit better at it, But for a long time, it was a true
Mm-hmm.
struggle to connect to others, to show any little bit of vulnerability. I think one thing that my college girlfriend had said to me once is a lot of people just feel like there's something off with you. And what I realized later was I didn't trust that. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel able to be myself with them. And so they could feel that I was hiding a part of me in all those
Mm-hmm.
conversations and that I was holding back.
So to that point, I have conversations with my sister once a week now so that we can stay in touch. Because I'm one of those people where it's out of sight, out of mind. And if I'm not regularly talking to you, it's not that I don't care about you. It's just you're over there and you're doing fine, obviously, because you're not calling me. So we set up this once a week thing so that we could both just connect and stay connected, which has been great for both of us. But we were actually having a conversation last night where, and I hope she doesn't kill me for this, but she was thinking she was an awful mother because her kid is awesome to her. They're his teachers and stuff. Like his teachers all think, and anybody else who sees him are like, oh, he's such a great kid. He's wonderful. He's energetic. He's great. And then he comes home and he can't pay attention. He can't follow direction. He's just exploding with energy and too much. And I looked at her and I went, you do know what that means, right? And she's, what do you mean? I'm like, if he masks for everybody else and then he comes home and he feels like he can be himself, what does that tell you? What does that mean? And she goes, that means he trusts us. I was like, yeah, that means he feels safe. That means he knows that no matter what happens, you're still going to love him. You're still going to be there. I never had that. I knew that if I did one breath in the wrong direction, I could be in trouble. There would be consequences or whatever. But her kid knows that he can trust her. He can be what he needs to be no matter what. And that is awesome. I was like, you're not a bad mom. You're a great mom. So don't think anything bad about yourself. But at the same time, when you are in friendships and they think there's something missing from you, or you're in a relationship and it's antagonistic a little bit, or there's problems in the relationship basically that are not quite as normal as other relationships. Though no relationship is normal because no person is normal. Let's get that on the table there. But if you're in a relationship where the person is awesome to everybody else, and then when they come to you, they are a little bit antagonistic, they are a little abrupt or whatever, that may mean that they're masking around everybody else but feel safe with you. And that means that you are a safe place for them. But that also means that you have to have a conversation with them and say, look, we're arguing more than we should be. I get that you feel safe and that you want to be here, but maybe what we can do is make sure that we're not fighting all the time because you need time to like decompress when you get home or something. So there are conversations that need to happen. I'm not saying that if your girlfriend is antagonistic a little bit, that you should break up with her as soon as that happens. Just probably not realistic in any kind of way. On the other hand, if it gets to a point where all you're doing is fighting and you don't feel comfortable in the situation anymore, or if it turns into physical, whether that's from a male or a female, I don't care who you are, you shouldn't be hitting people, then that in turn means that is time to leave. The first sign of somebody being violent towards you, you need to leave. I don't care if they've made you feel like you are worthless. You are not. Nobody is worthless. There's no price you can put on a person. You're priceless, not worthless. There's a difference, and it's huge. But so leaving that kind of situation is important. And if you don't have support, there are plenty of places out there for you. So find them. But the big thing for me is I do let off steam a little bit. I have my friend that I go to, and I'll have sat here and helped somebody through something. And now they understand it and they are golden. And I'm like, I am so glad that you got the help that you needed. And then I walk out there to my friend and I'm like, why did I have to say, no, left hand corner, top left. Go, no, not that way, the other way. 17,000 times just to get them to click one button. Because that does get frustrating. Did I show it to the person that I was helping? Absolutely not. Would I ever? Absolutely not. Because my frustration about them not knowing where something is not their fault. It is completely because I can see it, and sometimes my brain gets frustrated because how could you not? It's a big yellow button. On a sea of a white page, you have a yellow button. I am so sorry that I'm a little frustrated, but it doesn't mean they're stupid. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with them, but I am a little frustrated when I get off that kind of thing. So I'll go out there and I'll go, why did I have to say that so many times? And of course, they start laughing at me because she knows that I'm fine. I just need to spit it out for a second before I can just go back and go to work. Because I have to like get it out. I have to say something for a second and then I'm fine. Okay, now I'm good. And I can go back and I can help the next person or I can do whatever project. If I go out there, because I'm Italian, sometimes the volume button gets stuck on super high. And so I'll go out there and because I'm excited and I'm moving my hands around, because obviously I do that. You can see them at the bottom of the screen. But she'll go, Nikki, do you mean to be yelling at me? Or why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. And I have to turn the volume back down. So I don't actually realize I've crept up there.
I think there's a really good way of putting it is, instead of, because what my dad would say is, hey, I'm right next to you. And I was like, well, yeah, obviously, but I get what he's saying, but it was like 3 steps removed. I think a good way of saying it is like, hey, your volume's up a little bit. Let's bring this to something lower. And there's like a way that like it could be a little more nuanced and more direct rather than the freak out kind of reaction.
So for her, she's not mad at me or anything when she says that. She's laughing her butt off because I have lost control of my volume button. And she's just making sure I know that my volume dial is spinning out of control. And so as soon as I'm aware, because like I'll go, no, and then, ooh, yep, that is really loud because now I've heard it. And so I can turn it down. And that can happen when you're talking to somebody because you get excited or you're a little bit mad or you're frustrated or whatever. And so you don't realize how loud you are. Now, in the middle of a fight, if somebody goes, you're awfully loud and I can't stand it when you do this, I'm going to be on the defensive. Excuse me, I didn't realize I was doing it. Shut up and leave me alone. Instead of somebody saying, hey, why are you yelling? Or, hey, your volume's a little loud. And then I go, oh, yeah, let me turn that down again. Pointing it out isn't a problem, but if you say, for me, if you had said to me, your volume's a little loud, can you turn it down? Now I think you're pissed off at me because you don't want to hear my voice anymore. I'm good. I didn't need to like feel that bad about that. So just like that first part of what you said about saying your volume's a little loud is great because there are people like me who are Italian or of another descent who wear the volume button. Sometimes just start spinning madly and you don't know where it actually is.
Yeah. You could also be, hey, you're on commercial mode.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you heard about that, but like a whole, I think it's Netflix or something, just got sued because they were boosting the volume of commercials. And I've seen that in so many different platforms where you like have the volume at a certain level for the show and then wham, commercial.
Yeah, you could be listening on 5 and then the commercial is like 15 and you're just like.
Yeah, I think I'm inspired on this. I'm just like, hey, you're on commercial mode. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe I am a little loud. Cool. Now, something you mentioned about your sister's son, and because it's something I really connect with, and I'm curious if you did as well, but when I was like young and 10 to 15, I would play, whenever I'd like go hang out with friends and stuff, because it was such a social, like I had a great time, there's such a social drain, as an energy drain, and I'd get home and then I'd just be like, my social capacities would be completely gone. And then my mom would ask me to do something, and then I'd be like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm tired now. And there was multiple times she's like, maybe I shouldn't let you spend time with your friends if you're always going to come home cranky. And I was like, no, I had a great time, but now I'm exhausted.
Overstimulated.
My battery's depleted. I'm overstimulated. My social battery is empty. That's part of why I left. And so now you're asking me to be social with you, and there's nothing there. Is that something that like fits?
Yeah, and that was part of the conversation we had, was like, sometimes you get tired of being around people. Like, our conversation covered all that. But yeah, I find that, okay, so I leave my house 2 days a week. I am very much a homebody because, ta-da, I work from home. And that means I have to be home to do the work, especially since my laptop screen is not as big as the screens I have in front of me. And so I like how big it is in front of me. So I leave the house twice a week, Tuesdays and Sundays. Tuesdays are for my chiropractor and therapy because I do those once a week. Pain levels are...
I said I couldn't do that. I move around too much. Like, I'm in Mexico right now, so it'd be very difficult.
So on Tuesdays, we go to chiropractor, we go out to lunch, we go to my therapy, and then we come home. By the time we get home, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I have been all over Kingdom Come all day. I've had to interact with people that I don't know particularly well because you don't go to a restaurant and get served by the same person every single time. There was music I had to listen to that I didn't want to because everybody listens to different stuff, but sometimes what they put on in a restaurant just is not okay. Like, why did you play that song? Really? And then you have, because of my hearing problems, can hear every conversation going on around me. So there's a lot of input coming in. And so when I get home at the end of the day, I'm done. And so if I get a call about my business, I'm like, you do remember it's Tuesday. If you do need something, text me and I will contact you tomorrow. Tuesday's my day off because I'm out during the day. And when I get home, I am done. Put a fork in me. I'm not. There's no way I can now, like, oh, you need a video edited in 20 minutes. I don't have the bandwidth right now. I can do it first thing in the morning, but I can't do it right now. I've had to learn that boundary because I can get a little snippy with people when they're like, I still need it done today. Okay, then I don't have time for this. Goodbye. I'm not arguing with people. It's Tuesday. Do you remember it's Tuesday? And there are some days, like if I don't, like this Tuesday, I didn't go anywhere because obviously I sound a little bit different than normal. And so I stayed home and I did therapy online. So I did have some bandwidth to be able to get some things done. Did I tell people that I was home and that I wasn't doing anything? And if they wanted, they could call me? Heck no. Want to know why? I have set a boundary. Tuesdays are not to be contacted me. So I'm not going to screw myself over by saying, oh yeah, I'm home this Tuesday. Go ahead and call. Because that means next week when I'm actually at my therapist's office and my phone rings and I want to throw it out the window, it's not their fault. It's mine because I opened that door crack. If you give somebody an inch, they'll take a mile type deal.
How long did it take for you to be able to set good boundaries and then also maintain them?
It took a long time because I am a people pleaser to the bone. Somebody's, hey, I need help with this. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Let me help you. I want to be able to help you. I want to be able to help people. I have a lot of knowledge that is random and weird in my head, and I want to be able to help other people get things done or not be as frustrated with what they're doing because it's simple enough for me to go, if you click on that button, go to this thing and then do this, there you go, you're done. It's like a 3-step process, but some people can't find those buttons. It takes them a minute, and so I can help them. And being able to do all of that stuff is very easy to me, or it's very frustrating to other people. And so helping them is important to me. But it's also important that I not get burnout because I can't help anybody. There's that saying going around, you can't help anybody with an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty pitcher. If you have no more Kool-Aid in your pitcher, you can't give it to somebody else. Maybe Kool-Aid's a bad thing because of what happens with Kool-Aid a lot, but you can't give somebody something you don't have.
Even on airplanes, they say put your oxygen mask on first before helping somebody else, because if you're the one that's then incapacitated, you can't help anybody.
Yeah. If you have a kid with you and you pass out first and now you've not given oxygen, but your kid's fine, like, now you're twice as much trouble, and now somebody's got to put that mask on you if they see you, or you could be in trouble. But for me, I have been in therapy for a lot of years. What it took for me was I am super aware of my limitations. I am super aware of where I can do this, I'm fine. I know exactly where that line is. And I have learned that if I test that line too hard, I'm going to be the one that suffers. And I've gotten to the point that right about the time that I learned, hey, if you cut somebody out, you're not as drained. If you push too hard, you're drained too much. If you do this, you're that, right? Learning those this or that's about yourself are so important, because the this or that's are important. And so when somebody then starts pushing on that boundary you've put around yourself, because now you know that if you do this thing, this is what's going to happen. And somebody else comes in and they're like, it's not that big of a deal, you can just do it. You have to learn, hey, no, like, I learned for myself that boundary is there for a reason. It is not just an arbitrary thing. It is there because there are consequences for me if I do said thing. And so you learn, or I learned anyway, that I can't do all the things for all the people. I can do some of the things for some of the people. And so if somebody comes to me and it's something that's going to try to obliterate that line, I'm like, I can't do that. On Tuesdays when I know that I am completely drained, I don't have the energy, I don't want to do anything, if I go, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that, and I do it one day, that means they're going to come back next week and I'm going to have to do the same thing. And it's one of those things where if you don't protect yourself from invaders, which is exactly what that is, it's a time invader, then you're the one that's being punished, not the other person. They're getting what they want. They want this thing done, and you're doing it. So now you've given them and you've done the thing, so now what is your consequence? Is that something you really want to live with all the time? It started off simple. I picked a day that I was going to do my appointments. Have to do them during the week. I know it's a work day, but like I work on Saturdays anyway to make up for it. So now I have a day. And what I started to do was just tell people, okay, I have a day that I'm doing appointments. I'm no longer available on this day. I might have scattered other appointments that we have to work around, but this day is specifically set for these appointments, and that's not going to change. If you have a quick question and you need to call and have me answer it, no problem. But if it's going to mean I need to do something, I can't. That's not something that's going to happen on that day. I am not going to be around a computer. I'm not going to be even in the house. I can't do it. And the first couple of weeks you do something like that, you always get but can you do this quick thing for me? And I would be like, I'm so sorry, I'm not near my computer. It will have to wait until later. Did that cause problems? Yes. Did that cause frustration for the person who wanted me to do something right now? Yes. But guess what? They've also learned that I have boundaries, that I am not going to do everything just because you want it done. Now, if it's an extremely important thing, like there's going to be a summit that, the next day or something, I will make allowances for something humongous like that. Do I make those lightly? No. Do I let somebody say, hey, I know Kim's not in town, so I know you're going to be home. Is it possible for you to do this thing because I have a class I'm teaching on Wednesday? And I evaluate whether or not I'm okay enough to be able to do that. Finding the boundaries that you need, setting them, keeping them when people push against them, the number one thing you have to remember for any of those things is there are consequences for every action, whether good or bad. And if the consequence is bad, how bad does it have to be before it knocks you down? Before it means you can't do the work at all? Before it means you're in the hospital? I have autoimmune problems. I have breathing problems. I catch colds and they linger forever, as you can hear. This is the 3rd week of this. Like, this should not still be a thing. Everybody else was fine after 2 weeks. But guess what? I'm not that lucky. So you have to become aware of yourself. If you have a mental health problem, if you are ADHD, you have to be aware of your own mind, body, and soul. No, because not only if you have those things, but even if you're, quote, normal, you still have to know your body, mind, and soul. Because guess what? There is no such thing as normal. What's normal to one person's body isn't normal to somebody else's. Like, my inflammation levels are always a little bit higher than somebody else's. But for me, that's abnormal. Because I'm doing what I need to do. I'm not actually swollen or anything. That inflammation being 5 ticks up from what a normal person's is my normal. So you have to figure out your brain. And if you have mental health problems, that means going to therapy. That means putting in the work. That means becoming as aware of yourself as you can, so that when something goes off, when something goes wrong, you know it and you can make the adjustments you need to make to be able to fix it. I have been told that I am very aware of my mental health, and I am very aware of the things that are like why I am upset. I can make those connections. It's not exactly what everybody else can do, but I can make those connections. Does that make me super special and awesome? Absolutely not. What that means is I have lived with my trauma long enough that I know, hey, this time of year, this is why I'm upset.
Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with us. Before we dive into our next topic, I just want to take a quick moment to remind you to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. That way, you'll always be the first to know when a new episode drops. And we want to hear from you. What topics are you most excited about? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. We've got some exciting stuff coming your way, so don't miss out. Now, let's switch gears and jump into our next discussion.
I think awareness is really huge. I think a lot of people, though, confuse that with the whole pie, like the whole puzzle. And to converge this a little bit or change it a little bit, and a lot of what we're talking about is interesting because it's so relevant to the business world as well. So, like, just had a talk with one of my other coaches that I work with about boundaries, but let's start with awareness first, because as you said, that's step 1. And step 2 is what do you do with that awareness? Step 3 is how do you integrate that into your world? And when I'm teaching as a coach or as a consultant businesses on how to be a leader that's vulnerable, is okay, you first have to be aware of yourself. That's emotional intelligence. You need some social intelligence and just general awareness of how you present yourself, how you come off to others, how you interact, and really then understanding if this is how you come off, how do you either get the most out of that by connecting with others, by being vulnerable with them about why things are the way they are, or understanding how to really use that to communicate better and then make that more of a natural system. And so emotional intelligence is always something in my training programs that I always make sure people are doing, and then part of that is boundary setting. One of the coaches I worked with, as I had just mentioned, she is like telling me and our other coach, we have a mastermind we do on Fridays, and she's, yeah, I've done 6 hours or more of work and I haven't charged this client. When I asked them to do a contract, they said, I thought we were doing this on a trust basis. And so I asked her, I was like, how much of work have you done? She said many hours. And I said, okay, here's a boundary that a lot of us use, because we use a similar system that I think will help you, is 30 minutes maybe 45. You get the assessment for free. Anything else to be paid. You need an agreement. And she's had this issue with a couple of her people she worked with. I can't call them clients because they're not paying her, but people she's worked with, she's like, I just don't know when to stop giving them free stuff. I'm like, after you've given them a couple ideas, stop. Anything else is paid. She's told me how she went and has done an entire business plan with them that's multiple hours. She did.
No.
Yeah. And she's like, I've already done like 3 things. I'm like, so you've not only gone beyond what a free assessment is, you've not only gone beyond what your normal expectations of your role are of coaching into like full consulting. You're doing their work for them. And they told you that they're not going to pay you until they've 6 times their revenue. I'm like, you've already done $40,000 of work for them. You've created $4,000 additional revenue per month for them over the last 3 months for free. And all the stuff you've done is going to continue to generate more and more. I was like, I don't want to sound forceful. Stop here. Here's your point. I was like, I don't know if you have to write this down 100 times and have it on a sheet in front of you or what. This is where it ends. And I said, you could do 1 free full session of helping them, but then let them know in advance, say, hey, I'm going to give you, if you need this, that's fine, but his is my price if you pay for this first session. But if I've already done the work of an hour of work for you, you're actually going to pay a higher price because now you know a lot more about what I can do. There's less risk. You've got proof. You got significant proof, and now you're going to pay more for it because part of when we're doing coaching and consulting is you don't really know the true value that you can project out. But once you've really had a full taste, you need to pay more because you now are more confident in it. And there's, I mean, the entirety of every monetary system is you make more when there's more risk, less money. So that's where a lot of that comes to for me. And do you operate on a similar mindset with that too?
So I have a little bit of a special circumstance because I work with people who work with other people, and sometimes their person needs help doing something. And so I will do like one-on-one with their person for a half hour, 45 minutes to be able to go, okay, I know you're just trying to get into the app that you have available to you. Let's get that done. And that's free, sure. But if they start coming back to me and they're like, hey, I need this done and this done. No, that's you getting services from me now. So you now have to pay me because that is separate. But yeah, I work on that where I will meet with somebody and I will help them for about an hour, whatever. And I will get them one thing that they need right this second to be able to do something. After that, you have to become a client of mine, and it's going to cost you my monthly fee for that to be happening because I'm not doing all the work for free. I have learned, and it took a minute. When you are the person who always helps people, when you're the person who everybody comes to because, hey, how do you copy and paste again? You don't want to know how many times I've been asked that. I don't want to know how many times I've been asked.
That's a great opportunity to just make a quick video, and then if they ask, send them the video. My rule when I was at the accounting firm was if I've had to type something 3 times, I created either what was called a snippet, which is like a quick action. In HubSpot they use that, and then you just type a couple letters and bam, you get a whole paragraph, or create a video, like a 10-second video. Okay. I'm not going to explain this in person ever again unless it's I'm on call and in blah, blah. But yeah, if it's an email or something, here's my resource. Here's something. Here's a YouTube link if it already exists out there. At this point, what doesn't exist on YouTube, but finding, of course, the right one. But yeah, just create it yourself, put your voice on it, and then that's what they call evergreen. You've done it once, and then bam.
Yeah, I have a video now that I'm going to have to make because I have had the same question twice this week. So now I'm going to be making a video where if somebody else goes, hey, I'm having problems with the app doing this. Oh yeah, I already have that. Here you go. Now I don't have to take up time doing the meeting because I can make sure it's very clear when I do it.
Absolutely. And I guess to bring things back to leading with vulnerability is because these are all vulnerable things. You've probably read the book, one of the books by Brene Brown. She talks about, I'm missing it off the top of my head because she has a lot of different really good ones, but one of them where they talk about is how to use guilt. It's the gifts of imperfection is the one I read.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I've read that.
And so it talks about using guilt, using shame in order to be able to like connect with others. And it's really about when you harness and understand your vulnerabilities, that's how you can really connect to others. And that's how you can create boundaries. And one of the things she talks about is how not having boundaries, being that people pleaser without those boundaries is actually, we think about it, because I'm also a recovering people pleaser as well,
Yeah.
is if we don't set boundaries, it's actually a little bit selfish because you're not putting yourself and your priorities there. It makes it hard to communicate. People don't really know where things start and end with you. And so it's a lot of inclarity. It's a lot of, weird and false expectations. But when you have those conversations and you say, this is my boundary, this is why, and you get vulnerable with the reason behind that, they're more likely to A, understand it, B, follow it, and C, reward it. Be okay with setting their own boundaries. Because the more vulnerable you are, the more vulnerable they can be with you. And when it comes to the employee relationship, and I like to, and I'm coming with this off the top of my head, but if you go to your employer and they're just always focused on perfection and there's no room, in some ways this could be considered like a political environment or a perfectionist system where there's no room for error and it's punished. I'm gonna feel okay telling them that something's wrong and then that's where it creates huge issues. That's one of the things that was attributed to Enron, is that because people that saw it were like, I'm not gonna raise this bell, I'm gonna be punished for it, I might get fired and lose my job for bringing this up, and especially in engineering companies where they expect a lot of perfection and then massive pipelines break and things of that nature. But just by being vulnerable with, as a leader, to the people that follow you to some degree, you just create better communication and you're going to get better results, and people are more inspired to follow you. I think
when people feel like they can communicate with you, they will. They have that trust that if they come to you and they say something, even if it is, I broke the thing, okay, there might be a consequence for breaking the thing. I'm not gonna lie. There's consequences for a lot of things that we wish there wasn't, but there is. Like speeding. We all want to push the gas pedal, but we still have to pay attention to the road rules, so we can't get all that mad when we get a speeding ticket. But at the same time, it's going to be a lot worse if you hide it and the problem gets bigger. On the other hand, if you are a company where if somebody steps the smallest toe line and there is a problem, something did break, they're going to hide it as long as possible. And even once you find it, they're going to make it as hard as possible for you to figure out who did it, because of the fact that you were so strict with it. So there was that TV show about strict parents, right? And some of the times the kids were right in line with it. They knew what they could do. They knew what they couldn't do, and they were fine with it. So they just went with it. There's also that rebellious person sometimes in a strict family who doesn't believe that whatever that strict parent is making as a rule is a reasonable rule. So now they have decided they're not following it, and they're going to have to lie, sneak, or whatever to get it done. And so when you are either a company or a person where people don't feel like they can come to you, because if they do, they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get fired, they're going to get demoted. If they're your kid, they're going to get whatever punishment is the norm. They're going to become the world's best liar. And that is what you are raising, or that is what your employee has now become. And that closes the connection, that closes the conversation, that closes a lot of things that need to be there for things to be able to work correctly. And so now that it's closed, how do you get it to open back up? First of all, you fire whoever made the door close, because nobody's trusting that person ever again. And now you have to have that conversation. You have to open things back up. And that means, yes, you're going to have to be vulnerable. You're probably going to have to say, yes, Steve was a dick, but Steve is gone now. And so we're going to do this way. We're going to open up communication in this way. We're going to make sure that things are different. Nobody's going to steal your lunches anymore. And if they do, you can actually have, once we figure out who, there can be regress for that or whatever. I've read a lot of stories lately where people's lunches have been stolen. But
I'm lucky that if my lunch is stolen, there's only one potential person that could be. So it's. But yeah, and I think that's a really excellent point, because there are a lot of like rules that get broken and this and the other, and there's so many contexts for this. But if you punish things without vulnerability or without reason behind it, you just teach them to get better at hiding it, hiding themselves, hiding the activity. How do you create the best people at stealing things? Make it harder to steal, then they get better at doing that. And then as you increase the difficulty, they increase their abilities. It's with that in any type of lying, it's with that. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest things in trauma and mental health in general is there's this consistent negative feedback loop. And so your defenses, your protectors from the IFS perspective just get better and better at doing the opposite and just hiding it or reinforcing it more and more. But if you can just say, hey, I understand why you're doing this. This is why this is the way it is, and this is to your benefit, then you start solving the issues rather than making them worse or making them more, unfortunately, creative. And especially in the business context, like when you start creating all these things, like you need to sell 1,000 items per day, and it's unrealistic to do in a real way. What are people that are salespeople going to do? They're going to then be non-ethical about it. You create unrealistic expectations and you don't allow for failure. They're like, okay, I'm going to start harming people for my benefit because otherwise I face some kind of retribution. And that is one of the worst things you can have in a company. And some people are like, yeah, I just trust it because we have this ethical standard. We still have these insanely high expectations, but we just ask for people to be more ethical. It's not really how that works. Like, you could have the most ethical person in the world, but if you incentivize incorrectly and you treat them poorly, you'll be unpleasantly surprised on what they're going to do. They'll hate themselves for it or they'll leave. When you don't do things the right way and you incentivize wrong, that's a huge problem that we see. And that's one of my favorite things to talk about is you need to have better incentive systems. You need to have better communication. You need feedback in a way that shows that you're listening and you're doing and react and doing something about the feedback that you're getting. And it still plays into those boundaries. But when you create a system where your employee or someone doesn't feel comfortable giving those boundaries to you because you just break them or ignore them, you can't have a good system. Yeah. You also end up with a lot of turnover, which costs your money more, your company, not your money, your company more money, because now they've got to bring in somebody else, train them and all that. And now there's a lot of people out there who are like, corporations are bad and they have too much money and why don't they have to do this, that, or the other thing? Guess what? We don't get to tell people how much money they are allowed to have. That is called a rule of government that I don't want to be a part of. If we are saying, oh yeah, once you hit the $1 million thing, you can't make any more money until you are well under it so that you can earn back enough to be a millionaire. What? You can't say that to people.
I don't care if you turn 1 million into 1 billion. You still can't tell people that they have to spend more money so that they're under the billion at all costs. No, absolutely not.
I do think it would be entertaining to be like, there's the you win club, and like you get $1 billion of recurring money as a person, and it's like, you win, now you're shipped off to Mars or something, and you can live in your own utopia and not affect the rest of the real world, because you're no longer part of the real world. I think once you hit a certain amount of money, you have lost all connectivity with the human experience. And that might be a little bit drastic, but I think Bezos was asked, I think a couple of years ago, he's like, how much do you think an apple costs? He's like, I don't know, like $14. And man, that's crazy. And you want to raise prices on everything on people because you're like, they can afford it. No, in fact, people cannot afford that. The fact that you think so, just you're so divergent from reality.
I think there needs to be checks and balances between the person who is the super CEO, right? And the decision to change pricing and stuff like that. There has to be somebody who's more connected to what is actually happening in a not normal, but in a middle class home, in order to be able to say they can't afford it if you do that.
I think most corporations would benefit by having the lowest paid employee in the company in board meetings. And so maybe they say a little bit or not, but just see their facial reactions to the conversations, so that the other people would be like, oh, maybe that's crazy. Because when they're in an echo chamber of all the other people that have a more similar mindset, they're like, oh yeah, this seems normal. But having one or two people at the bottom of the company being like, I'm sorry, you said what?
Yeah, that's like advertising. If you're going to put an ad out somewhere, please have a 12-year-old boy look at it just for a minute. That's going to help you so much. And I don't care what kind of company you have. I don't care what kind of logo you have. And you think it's the best logo and name ever, hand it to a 12-year-old boy before you put it anywhere. Because I'm telling you now, if that kid laughs, you're in trouble. You need to make some changes, because, yeah, that happens. You see it all over the place where a sign is somewhere and you're like, yeah, I don't think that was supposed to be there. But so with all of that and leaders and money and signage, they're having checks and balances in place so that the people at the top still understand what's happening at the bottom is great. Give people that voice to be able to say, I think you're knucking futz, because that was crazy. I can't believe you thought that would work. Yes, completely do that. Because there comes a time when you get a salary, and I'm saying this as a person who does not make all that much, but there comes a time maybe when you hit the 130,000 a year mark where you're comfortable. You can buy what you want at the grocery store. You can go get something expensive because you want to. You're comfortable. And now you've lost touch with the person who's making 40,000 a year and what their problems are. You're disconnected from that because it's easier for you. And you're like, oh, it's not that much. Why would I worry about the price of an apple? Why would a billionaire care how much an apple costs? He's just going to go buy it. He's not looking at the signs. And actually, he's not even buying it. He's got a cook or something that does that.
He's got an assistant, maybe an assistant to his assistant that's doing that at that point.
Yeah, you have a cook that is dealing with all that stuff. So you're not even in the grocery store anymore. So now you're even more disconnected. Is that a bad thing? No. I hate going grocery shopping. If I could foster that off to somebody else, I absolutely would in a heartbeat. I already do. Besides the point. Because I don't like being around that many people. I don't like being in big crowds. I don't like people in Walmart trying to slam into me with their cart. I'm not tiny. You should have saw that I was standing here.
My favorite is, since I'm a little bit on the taller side, is it's like when I'm turning around corners and somebody significantly shorter than me just runs into me, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea something was coming at me at 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall. Man, took me off guard. I'm looking at the shelf up here, and bam. Luckily they're tiny, don't weigh a lot. I'm just nudged a little bit. I'm like, oh, oh, I should have seen that coming.
There's always this connection between people who are lower middle class and lower, and upper middle class and higher, because upper middle class is where you're comfortable, and then you go up from there. Lower middle class, you're okay, but you can't always get what you want right now. You probably have to save for some of it.
Yeah.
And then you go lower, and obviously they can afford less and less. That person who can't afford an apple because they don't have the money for it, they don't have whatever for it, they understand how much the apple costs. They know it off the top of their head. I want an apple today. Oh, it's 75 cents today, and I only have enough to get 2 meals without the apple. If I put the apple in there, then I can only get like 1.5 meals. So you know how to like stretch and move your budget to what you need.
Yeah.
But that person above that line has no idea what an apple costs, because they either don't care because they can grab it every single time they want it, or they're not even the one in the grocery store ever. Why would they waste time doing that when they have a cook who just goes and gets what they need for what they're cooking? But at the same time, we can't tell the wealthy person that they're screwed in the head because they don't know how much an apple costs. I'm sorry, if I was lucky enough to start making that much money, I wouldn't care how much an apple cost either, right?
Yep.
But again, that does mean that the rich person cannot turn around to the poor person and go, if you gave up your Starbucks, you'd be able to afford it in a minute. Because yes, there are vices that people have. Like if you smoke, you're wasting something like $7,000 to $8,000 a year on cigarettes. Maybe more. I don't know the math on that. Depends on how much you smoke.
I know
You're
in New York, they're a lot more expensive than other places.
Yeah, you're wasting that money. And don't worry if it's cigarettes or you're putting this stuff in your lip or you're vaping or whatever. That all costs money on a daily, weekly, monthly level that other people aren't spending that money on. Does that mean I get to tell you you shouldn't have those things? No, I smoked for a lot of years. I gave that up. Yay me. That does mean that if you're missing out on something and you have one of those either addictions or you just want your coffee in the morning, then you adjust your budget accordingly so that you know what you can or cannot afford. That doesn't mean you get to say, well, that person makes more than me, so they're better than me. Nobody's better than anybody else. As soon as you get that out of your head, you'll be doing a lot better, right? We don't have a class system in the U.S. Nobody is better than anybody else. What it is, some people are experienced at different things. Some people have vulnerabilities and boundaries and things that they have had to put up because of trauma or other reasons. They know that those boundaries are helping them. That doesn't mean you get to come in and go, but your mom loved you. You should just let it go and go talk to her again. No, that to people.
Yeah. As we're wrapping up here, are there any last thoughts or questions that you have on maybe that I could offer about vulnerability and leadership that you had on your mind?
So for vulnerability and leadership, what is your favorite tip to give people? What is your favorite thing? Because we know the first thing is being aware of the problem. Just if we were to go to AA, the first step is, I am an addict. I did this. The first step is always becoming aware that there is a problem. Because if you're not aware there's a problem, you can't admit it. So what is your favorite, why don't you know this? Here you go. Know this.
I'd say when it comes to vulnerability, and it comes with feedback, is before you even go into those conversations, and the reason why, just to take a step back before that, is why things like love languages are important, is because when you are putting in a position of power and you are asking something of somebody else, it is always better to figure out what is the way they need to hear that, for that to go as effectively as possible. And then use that language that they need to hear to communicate what you need to say, and communicate in a way that is open and it doesn't sound commanding. And it sounds like hey, I want us to be on the same page. And then part two of that is when you're being vulnerable with people, allow them to be vulnerable back and then do something about it. Because if someone's vulnerable with you in return to your vulnerability and then you just forget or ignore or do nothing with it, they're going to learn to not be vulnerable with you again. Because what was the point? It was not, from a psychological perspective, was not rewarded. It was not confirmed. It didn't have meaning to it anymore. And you go in with a promise of meaning. If you don't create new meaning or action out of that, then what was the point? And no one wants to do something that feels pointless. Even whimsy, even the most basic things that we do that others might think is pointless. We do because we get enjoyment out of it. But if it's just something that was done without any results, then that's the only true pointless thing, I would say.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. You can't go to somebody and tell them or have them say to you that it really hurts when you say this to me. And you go, oh, I'm sorry, I'll work on that. And then you go back the next day and you say that thing to them again. Now it's your fault. Once you've been told something, you have to maybe not remember it, because that's not always
possible.
It's not that it's possible. You can remember it all you want. Remembering isn't active. If you're not doing active things, like not saying the thing, or I don't like it when you bump into me like that because it makes me fall over. Okay, I won't do that anymore. You're not actually stopping the action if it's something that's hurting somebody, or you're not starting the action because you're not doing it as hurting somebody. Without doing, the actual doing, you're not doing anything. You're not helping in any way. You're actually making the problem worse.
Yeah. And I know one thing I struggle with is I learn things very conceptually, very quickly. You've told me something, I've heard it, I understand it, I will remember it. Putting it into practice takes a lot of practice. I'm like, okay, now to think about this very actively. Back when I was playing football in high school, like I could have been potentially a star player if when they told me something, I could actually do it the way they said. But I already had so much of a habit or so much of a practice of doing it a different way, it would take me longer to actually change that. And I'd like, as soon as I would do it, darn it, I did it again, and it happened probably 20 more times. And then at that point, my coach would be frustrated and be like, all right, somebody else go in. But that 21st time, I would have got it, and then it would have been perfect. That's, I think, a really good point for you to bring up, because telling somebody something, you also can't just expect that to be done again. And you need to have a little bit of compassion there, because somebody just knowing something is not the same as ability to do it perfectly.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of grace that is needed on both sides, because I know that if somebody comes to me and goes, hey, Nikki, when you get loud, it makes me feel like you're yelling at me and you're mad at me, and I don't like that. And I'm like, I never meant for you to feel like that. And now I'm on the defensive, and I'm like, I never meant for that to happen. Like, I'll work on it. But like at the same time, I'm me. I'm a weirdo. I'm a little blunt, and I'm a little loud, and that ends up meaning that sometimes I fall back because I don't, like I said before, I don't know sometimes where my volume is set at. I think it's set in a reasonable 10, and somebody else is going, you're yelling at me, your volume is like at an 80. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I had gotten that loud, because I've gotten excited or I'm angry about something. And it's not that I'm like all the time yelling at people. Don't get that misconception. It is my volume level goes up. There are times when I yell, because I mean to yell. I am pissed off and I'm going to yell. Does that mean that the person I'm talking to is the person I'm mad at? No. But they're going to know I'm mad anyway. But then I make sure they know, like, I am venting. They know that I am not actually mad at them. I'm mad at the situation I was in. I may not even be mad at the person who created the situation. I'm mad at the situation itself. Like, how did I get stuck here?
Yep.
And so there's that. But I also know that person now requires me to think about where my volume level is before I start talking. Does that mean I get it right the first time? No. Does that mean when I get super excited and I'm waving my hands all around that I remember that person needs my volume to be lower? No. Like we said, we were talking about before, do that gentle correction thing where you're like, hey, your volume. And I will, oh yeah, so sorry, and bring it back down to a more reasonable level. My volume, because of the genes that I have in my system, does not always have the clicky noise that makes sure, hey, your volume's going up.
Absolutely. And I think that we're all guilty of that. When we're excited, volume just naturally goes up. And it's great when it's in an appropriate place for it. Sometimes it's not an appropriate place to bring back to your restaurant, at least. And sometimes you just sit next to people at a restaurant, you're like, you want to have a calm conversation, and the group next to you, man, they're like levels like up to here, and man, you're part of, I wish I was having that much fun, but you're also like, man, this is a Wendy's. You can bring that down a lot.
Yeah.
There's no reason everyone else is quiet. There's a huge volume difference.
Your voice is now echoing in the building. Could we knock that down a couple octaves?
It's now echoing in my ears. And I don't need that. I have enough input coming through. We can skip that, hopefully.
Yeah. And the big point that I think we both mentioned, but maybe not like directly, vulnerability doesn't mean that you're going to this person and crying to them and saying, you hurt my feelings. No, because nobody wants that. What it does mean is that you are being vulnerable enough to say, or you are being open enough to say, hey, this is bothering me, or this is what needs to be done, or this is what needs to do whatever. You're being open enough to say those things and the reason behind them so that people can actually understand. And you're doing it in a way that, hey, like me, I'm a little blunt, but the people I work with know that I am. So when I start going into that, this is what needs to happen type deal, they know it's because I'm coming from a place of these are the steps. It's not from a place of you're an idiot, do this and that. It's these are the steps to do. I'm just a little more blunt than others. Because we have a lot of people nowadays that are like, you have to respect my feelings. No, I can acknowledge them. I understand that this thing makes you upset. But in some circumstances, even if you tell me something is making you upset, I'm not going to change. There are just some circumstances where your feelings don't matter. And I think we all need to realize that. But being vulnerable doesn't mean you are weak. It doesn't mean that you are crying all the time. That's not what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is being able to say the things that are bothering you, or
communicate your needs, your wants, your desires, your frustrations, but mostly your needs and wants is about you at the end of the day.
Yeah. And in a way that doesn't make it somebody else's fault.
Exactly.
Instead of you made me feel, it's this situation made me feel like I was dumb, and I would appreciate not feeling dumb again. Do I need to learn something new, or do I need to do something new so that this situation doesn't happen again? Being vulnerable is a good thing when it's done correctly and you're actually doing it the way it's meant to be done. If you're being vulnerable and somebody's like, you're so emotional all the time, first of all, check yourself for gaslighting. Second of all, if it is true that you are emotional every time you go try to be vulnerable with somebody, you're doing it wrong.
Yep. You can be clear without being teary.
Or you can, if you're one of those people who are like, I am blunt, but I do it because I love you. Okay, so telling somebody that they're fat is not being blunt, that's being rude. When I say that I am blunt, it means that yes, I'm going to have the hi, how are you part of the conversation, but if this is the third time we've talked today, it means I'm going, hi, this is my problem, this is the situation I'm in, this is how you can help me fix it. I'm not going to keep doing the hi, how are you, how's the kids, if I have to talk to you multiple times in one day. I am just that little bit more blunt where I'm just going to go, hey, I have this problem. Let's fix it. I'm blunt in that way. I am not the one who's going to go to a dinner and go, oh, that chick over there is so fat. Guess what? I'm fat. Why would I do that to somebody else? Even if I wasn't fat, why would I do that to somebody else? If somebody can't fix it in 5 seconds, shut up. If they have something in their teeth, tell them so that they can get it out. If they have a stain on their shirt, you can say, hey, you have a whole tomato on your arm. Maybe get the tomato off and fix it later. Those types of things you can say. If you walk up to somebody who's in a wheelchair and go, get up, it's time to start walking, why would you do that? Why would you tell somebody who may be partially ambulatory that they should just never have to use, it's my turn to use that. I need to sit down for a second. Excuse me? No.
Yeah, it's crazy. But man, I think this was a really good conversation today. Thanks for having me on, Nikki.
Yep. It was great having you. I appreciate you coming, and I will see you in the weeks to come as we do more stuff with Tanya's groups.
I appreciate that.